So, welcome back, folks, to The Ones. This is a Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live discussion podcast. And it's finally happened. We finally have an episode that we get to talk about. It's so exciting. We cannot wait. We're going to get right to it. But first, if you have not watched the episode, you don't want to be spoiled, then stop right now, go watch, and then come back because we're not going to talk around anything. So, but before we get started talking about that episode, there's a few things we want to discuss first. One of them is that one of you guys left us a couple of questions in the comments of one of our videos, and we wanted to answer. Now, it was Rise Up Michonne 4521. She asked us a couple of questions in the first podcast video we uploaded, the preview part 1 video. And one of the questions she asked was if we could dedicate a song to Michonne and the ones who live, what would it be? And the three of us each gave a song, but we answered that question in the YouTube comments, in the video comments. So if you want to check out what our song selections were, just go to the comment section of the preview part 1 YouTube video. The second question she asked us was because we've talked about the fact that we've all written Michonne fanfic, and she asked us a scene or an arc from a Walking Dead episode that we wrote in a fic where we had a different take from the writers in the show, or we took that scene or that arc to a deeper level. We dug into it and I don't know, extended on it or had a different take. So what are we most proud of? Imani, of all your fanfics, what storyline, what scene did you kind of do a little remix of that you're most proud of?
I didn't remember the most proud of part, but the
Oh.
one that I did like a remix-ish on was the Your Face is Losing the War when
Mhm.
in season 4, episode
Mhm.
1. I just went a little bit deeper with it. They had a real conversation about it because clearly he did not end up using the razor. Um and so, or rather the shaver. And so we had a conversation, like I had them have a conversation about why exactly he was not going to use it.
Mhm.
And it led to her giving him a straight razor shave, and then it led to other things.
Nice.
So
Okay. Because what else could it lead to?
Course.
I mean, like once you trust a woman with a razor, I mean, what else is there?
Yeah.
Right about that. Okay. Ashley, what about you?
Oh my goodness. I think basically all of my fics, like the reason I started writing fan fiction was to like do exactly that. So this was kind of a hard question. All of them, but I'm gonna pick like three that I really, really like. All of
Mhm.
them have to do with whatever they were doing with Jesse and that whole arc.
Mhm.
The first one I really love the whole story is My Funny Valentine. It's like a redo of season 5 and kind of giving context to Rick's actions, if you can. I don't even know if that's possible, but I tried.
Mhm.
And then Her, which is my favorite like canon fic that I've written, is just kind of what I was hoping for to see in season 6. I wrote it right before season 6 aired, but it was my hopes for how they handled Jesse and how Rick and Michonne ended up getting together. And then the other one, I shouldn't mention this because I did not finish the story, but the part that I really love is I changed it so that Michonne took on more of the constable role that she should have had. And instead of the whole thing playing out with Jesse between Rick and Carol and the mess that they made of it, she went to Michonne to try to help her with her domestic violence situation. So I really hated how they turned that. Like it was romance and domestic violence is really sloppy. So um,
Yes.
giving that to Michonne and having it like a girl power
Handled
moment.
properly.
Yes.
I mean, it was not handled properly. Rick found out and he lost his mind, but
Ah,
it started with the women and, it made a lot more sense to me.
Because it wasn't about her. It was him.
Right,
It was his ego and it
right.
was whatever he felt he needed to fix or whatever. Yeah,
It
that was gross.
was messy. It was messy. So, yeah.
Mine, um, It wasn't a Michonne one, but in a yet to be completed story, Haunted, I gave Sasha and Michonne a deep friendship when they were in Alexandria. So
Oh.
that's the one I'm most proud of, I guess. Okay. So, but there are some other questions that you guys had submitted through our submission form, and that we're going to get to those and answer those throughout this podcast. Um, Before we start the episode, one more thing to talk about, and that's Ashley's New York City premiere experience. We want to hear all about it. Tell us.
Oh, well, there's not a lot. There's nothing like extraordinary to report. It was just, I want to say, I mean, you guys saw the premiere, so you know how it felt. But it was like just really great to experience it with other Walking Dead fans. Like, I think that was something, especially with COVID, you kind of miss those community experiences. I haven't been to a convention or anything in forever, so
Mm.
it was nice to kind of be in that atmosphere again. And with people who understand when you say clear exactly what that episode is and what that means. It was so funny because I didn't know what I was sitting down to. Obviously, we were all very we were excited, but you had
Mm.
no idea like what was going to happen. And so watching this with a crowd, everybody screaming, like I was there with my friend who's a very big Michonne fan as well. We were shaking and crying like by the end of the episode. And I think that that was really the best way I could have experienced it. So my review of this episode might be tainted by that amazing experience, but I loved it so much. And then afterward, I really wanted to see if I could go just say hi to Denai, but somehow I ended up in front of Andy, and it was chaos down there. Like you go, it's this small theater. Everybody in the room basically rushed to the front, so I was crushed, and I was like standing right in front of Andy. And for some reason, everybody was getting stuff signed, and I had nothing, so I just handed over my phone. Not the best idea because I had to get home with that phone, but he signed it. It was very nice. I finally did get down to the other side of the stage where then I was, and she was leaving. Like, I'm like, God damn it. Why is this happening? But she saw me and she turned around. And one thing I really, really love about her is that, I haven't seen her since like before COVID, like I think 2019 maybe. She's like, I know you. How are you? I'm like,
Mhm.
and it's so stupid because she doesn't really know me, but she recognized me, and it makes me feel like, she cares. I know she does. She cares about her fans a lot, and I really, really love that about her. So it was worth going to New York just for that. But the premiere was nice. And then, so then I went outside. I was saying goodbye to my friend, had every intention of just like getting in an Uber and going back to my hotel. Like it was done. It was fine. But I saw this big group of people like standing around. I'm like, what are you guys doing? And they said they're waiting for Andy. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm waiting for Andy too. And luckily he did come out very quickly.
Uh-huh.
He was about to leave, got out of his car to, greet fans again. They're both so sweet. So I ended up like right in the front row of this barricade. And this girl next to me had said something like, I came from Canada or something like that. And he, stopped to talk to her for a second. I was like, let me try that. Andy, I came from Atlanta. He lit up. He stopped and talked to me, asked how Atlanta was doing. I'm like, we miss you. Please come back. I got a selfie. It's terrible, so no, I will not be showing it. But I'm very happy that, besides the premiere, which was amazing, I got, FaceTime with my two favorite people. So it was absolutely
Nice.
worth the trip.
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
Woohoo.
I wish you guys could have been there, but next time I'm
No.
manifesting season 2. So
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Because
Yeah.
we were definitely going to talk about a possible season 2, or specifically why we think there should be a season 2.
Yeah.
But okay, so let's get into this episode. Episode 1, Years, written by Scott Gimple, also story by Denai and Andy. Just a quick little overview. You have flashbacks, time jumps, you have the nonlinear storytelling, and they finally tell us like where Rick has been and why he's been unable to return to his family in Alexandria. Basically, he's under CRM rule in Pennsylvania. I assume it's kind of like basically Philadelphia,
Mhm.
right? So throughout the episode, Michonne is still ever present in visual representation of Rick's dreams, where we see Rick in this pre-apocalyptic world, and he meets and quickly falls in love with Michonne during all these dreams. And it's very, this idyllic setting where it's just the two of them. It seems like in the entire world on a bench, right? But, Michonne is always on Rick's mind because the show uses voiceover to narrate the letters that Rick writes to Michonne, even though, she'll never read them. His life is one with no freedom. He's a consignee, which is someone who works outside the outskirts of the community for the opportunity to gain citizenship after about 6 years. We see Rick like fail several times to escape, and he like almost begrudgingly uh, befriends two people. One is Esteban, who has just gained his citizenship, and the other is another consignee named Thorne, who she works with Rick. But Rick's most complicated relationship has to be with Lieutenant Colonel Okafor, who is like repeatedly trying to recruit Rick into the CRM. And Rick holds out for almost the entire episode, which, spans years, of course. But he finally joins and he plays good soldier until he can attempt another, escape, which is foiled by walkers, which they're called delts, I think, in this show. It's also foiled by, another damn kid, just comes out of nowhere, and also Thorne. But we see Rick train while he's in the CRM. He eventually gains more responsibility. He rises in the ranks, and eventually, he makes the decision that he's going to stop trying to escape. He's going to stop trying to reunite with his family. It's like, okay, he kind of gave in. And he's flying a helicopter because Rick learned how to fly a helicopter, along with Okafor and some other CRM soldiers. They're attacked with missiles. Okafor is killed. They have a, crash landing, and Rick comes face to face with the enemy who attacked them, none other than his wife, Michonne. So that's episode 1, briefly. So does that sound about right? Did I kind of got it? Okay, good. So, before we get into like, the nitty gritty, the details, The Bachelor always has this thing on the first night where they give out a first impression rose. So it can't be an Rick or Michonne. It has to be new characters only. Who would get your first impression rose and why? Let's start with you, Imani.
I hope that I'm not just going to be repeating what both of you say, but I
You
suspect
might,
that I
because
will
we don't
be.
know.
I suspect that I will be. It's going to be Okafor for me, Craig Tate. Like it's just, I mean, everybody else was great. I thought, that they all did a great job, but in just one episode, he really was commanding. He really showed that he was a person that was someone of integrity who was really trying to take Rick under his wing and really trying to help him. And I mean, of course, had ulterior motives and stuff, but like Craig did so much with just a little bit of screen time that he had that I was just like blown away.
Okay. Ashley?
Yeah, I mean that's the answer, but I'm going to say Pearl Thorne because I loved her so much. I'll have more to say once we get to her part. But yeah, she brought levity, she brought heart, she brought like boss energy. Like and I love that she kind of opens up the world a little bit more. I mean, coming from the Cape Town, she ends up in Las Vegas. It was really interesting story. I love how she treated Rick. Remind me a little bit of him and Michonne when they first met. So she's my MVP. She gets my rose.
Okay. So, and my rose, goes to Okafor. Yeah, he was just amazing. I don't think I need to say anything more than what Imani said. He was just great. So, by the time we got to episode 1, it was devastating, and it's a good thing we gave him, our first impression rose, because he ain't gonna have opportunity for nothing else. So, but anyway, okay, so when the episode opens, it starts with Rick, and he's in this very I think it's probably easy to say that he's kind of like given up and he's lost hope, but I think it's a little more, nuanced than that, because he hasn't lost hope because he continues to try to, repeatedly escape,
Mhm.
So, but when we first meet him, he's standing, he's kind of looking outside this window. I'm gonna take a moment to say this, because we're gonna have the timestamps down in the descriptions. Um, and so we're about to talk about, some mental health and suicidal ideation. And so if that's something that you don't want to hear and you want to kind of skip past that, just, go down in the descriptions, look at the time stamps or whatever, and you'll see where you can pick up our conversation again. And we're going to work to make sure that we only talk about this topic during this time.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So, yeah. So he, he has this piece of glass that's broken glass, and he puts it to his neck, and he's having a hard time. He you can see the tears in his eyes.
Mhm.
The first thing I want to say is this: that moment when the show starts, we're not starting in present day. We're
Right.
not starting in now. Okay, so but there was, I saw a couple of people say some things like, "Oh, Rick would never do that. Rick would never think about doing that, and he wouldn't do that." And it's like, I mean, the first thing was like, you mean other than the first time when in the pilot he put a gun to his head under the tank and said, "Lori, Carl, sorry." Um, but other than that, it's this idea that it's like strong people, quote unquote strong people, don't
Mhm.
commit suicide, and it's just not, something that Rick would do. So, Amani, I'd like for you to speak on, Rick's mental health and the suicidal ideation he had.
Yeah, I thought that it was interesting to hear that those kind of comments because as a fan of the show watching, one of the things that I've always kind of been aware of about Rick is the fact that he his emotional state can get quite fragile. And there are multiple examples of that. We have, season 3 after Lori's death, when he's, inside the prison, he's not talking to anyone, he's talking on the phone to people who are no longer alive. You have season 5 when they move to Alexandria and he realizes that, they're in this place that he and Lori had dreamt of. And he does some stuff that really, up until then, was totally out of character for him. I don't understand how you could see any of that behavior as anything other than some, distress. Um, there's season 7 when after Abraham and Glenn are killed, and he just really can't handle like having lost these people that he really kind of feels like he's in charge of. And luckily, in season 3, when Lori died, he had Herschel there to tell him, snap out of it. And do I love that sort of representation of mental illness where you can just be like snap out of it? No, but for the purpose of the show, he Herschel asked him, to be present again. And it took a while. I think that other people don't even realize that. It took a while. This was not something that he didn't walk out of the jail and went with and rejoin the group and it was immediately well. He walked out of the jail and he was still seeing Lori places. He was still having moments. He had still decided to retreat to becoming Farmer Rick. Like, it was a process for him to come out of it. Um, it was a process after he lost the prison to, like, I mean, he did that much quicker. With the saviors, he had Michonne to help him like regain his footing. In season 8, after he lost Carl, again he kind of lost it and he was out there, he's killing saviors that he's swearing that he's not going to kill, he's doing all sorts of stuff. Like, Rick's mental health has always been a cause of concern. um and to suggest that he didn't have these struggles or that he wouldn't have this, that he wouldn't hit a level of despair where he would consider suicide is just kind of, to me, not really fully grasping the wholeness of Rick's character. Yes, he's this hero. Yes, he's, strong and a leader and that sort of thing, but emotionally, like, he takes things really hard. And I mean, after this long without his family, I don't understand how you wouldn't understand that it would take a toll on him. And knowing that he's already, has these problems. Not problems, but he struggles with this.
It's like they say, like, check on your strong friends.
Yeah.
You just don't know what people are going through. Did you want to add anything, Ashley?
I just find it strange that people couldn't see that he was, at the end of his rope. This is someone who literally cut off his hand to get away. It didn't work. He's survived for literally as long as he can. These people are telling him repeatedly he has no option but to submit. And on top of that, this other world that he's in is starting to crumble. Like, I don't know anybody, like, this is not just specific to the Walking Dead fandom. People are dismissive of mental health struggles in general, and people think therapy is some magic fix that should be the end all be all in a couple of months. But it's a lifetime journey. This is an insane situation to be in. So, I mean, if you put yourself in Rick's shoes, no matter how strong you think he is, if you put yourself in Rick's shoes where you've been alone essentially for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, it's just logical, honestly. It's not even a question of is he strong. Like, suicide, mental health has nothing to do with how strong you are. It's a struggle. And I'm really kind of disappointed that some people are saying that, but luckily I think most people understood it and feel for him.
Yeah.
And I'm glad he didn't do it, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you mentioned something, you talked about the hand. So let's just go there. After, we kind of come out of that moment of, where he's staring, outside, and there was a television that was playing, and we'll come back to that later. He's out at night with some other consignees. They're, clearing the dead. Yeah.
Just one point of order, just so that we help people understand. We jump back in time for that. Once we're away from that, and you're back to him being a consignee outside, like planning his escape. We've jumped back to when he was 5 years away from
5 years.
This was 5 years after the bridge. We see him. It's at night with some other consignees. They're being, and there's some CRM soldiers who are overseeing them as they're, taking down these, I'm going to call them walkers because, but, they're called delts in the show, but I'm calling them walkers. And these walkers are on fire. And so Rick is tethered to a CRM soldier like he's one of those little children at the mall, right? So he can only go so far. And why? Because obviously he's tried to run away before. So he has it in his mind. He gets far as he can. And, he decides, okay, I'm going to make a run for it. And he does this thing that I said I did not want to see. And they were like, well, screw you. You're going to see it like immediately. And so he has an axe and he chops his hand off so he can get free. Now, desperation makes you, stupid, apparently, because there was no plan after you chop your hand. But anyway, he chops his hand. They're chasing, CRM soldiers are chasing him. He cauterizes it in a, walker that's, on fire. And then he promptly gets tased and drops to the ground. And that's the end of that.
That is the end of that.
That's the end of that.
So number 4 failed.
All he got for it was a stump. So then, we kind of learn about Rick's life and this world that he's living in, with voiceover. And the voiceover that we're hearing is, his letters to Michonne, right? And so we get to a point, it's during the day, and once again, he is killing walkers. And it's through this, like, this brick, kind of facade or whatever. And then he has, I think what we see is his first interaction that we get to see with Lieutenant Colonel Okafor. And he's once again saying how he wants Rick to join the CRM. Um, Ashley, talk about that interaction with them.
So it feels like Rick isn't quite clear on the relationship Okafor, or the role that Okafor has in him being there. Interestingly, we learned a little bit about A's and B's and the world beyond, and definitely more in this show. But the part that really interested me was that before it was very clear that Rick was an A, and he still, brought him here. He still fought for him to be a consignee. He saved his life, basically. That's what he's telling him. And Rick, like me, is also kind of like, why? He doesn't want to be there. The thing about CRM that really kind of annoys me is, and that's the point, is that, they're pretending to be saviors, but really they're punishing people that don't want to be there. And so I want to go back to the hand really quick, because I thought that Rick was going to lose his hand because he ran away. The fact that he cut it off himself trying to get away is actually, it's romantic, it's dumb, but I kind of love that for Rick. That he loved Michonne that much. But yeah, so the fact that CRM is like, you're allowed to volunteer to be out here, that doesn't quite make sense to me. He's tried to run away 3 times and you're still like, yeah, sure, go outside. Good luck. What? And then Okafor, despite all of his attempts, is still all in on Rick Grimes. He's like, I see something great in you, and I'm gonna bring it out of you, whether you like it or not. Cut off your hand, okay. Don't lose your life. We need it. So thank you also to Okafor for, I mean, everybody's trying to save Rick, despite him, making all these strides. He just wants to get home at any cost. And the people around him are like, actually, no. It's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, so they, that interaction they had, and I remember that scene and I was like, oh, so like Walker blood doesn't mean anything anymore. Because when he took off his mask, he's like killing these walkers, and the blood is spattering all over his face. And I was just like, we're doing this again, where something that was supposed to mean something just doesn't mean anything right now. But that was just something that I noticed that was, I was like, okay, here we go again. But
I didn't pick that up, but you're right.
so, and then we get to see Rick's relationship with Esteban. And we first see them because after Rick kills all these walkers, and he's got the blood all over him, he eventually goes and he sits on a bench, looking at the water view, walker blood still on him. And then that's when we meet Esteban. And that interaction told us some things. And what did you get out of that interaction, Imani?
Well, it was, a dump of expository information, basically. That was honestly, a little clunky. Do better, Scott.
I needed it. I needed
but
it.
there were better ways to do that. There were better ways to say, Rick's been a lone wolf for 5 years. He only kind of let Esteban in the last 2. And the path to citizenship is this thing. Like, he explained it in his letter to Michonne, like 6 years out, then you get in. But, in the end, Esteban is the one who had to carry that whole conversation and say that, when it could have been an exchange of ideas where you discovered through their conversation that that's the case. But that's, it's a quibble, but I just felt like there were better ways to explain that, especially since Esteban ends up being a very valuable friend to him. So, I like Esteban. It's just that they gave him some really clunky dialogue.
Heavy lifting.
Say that again.
Heavy lifting for
yeah, exactly. When they didn't need to, when they really didn't need to.
That was the scene also where, for whatever reason, it takes Esteban for Rick to realize that, oh, I can like become a CRM soldier and maybe get more freedom, and then I can take another opportunity to get free.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
So
it seems like something Rick could have come up with on his own,
truly.
Absolutely.
but sure.
Oh, I have to say though, I did like the idea because a lot of times in film and television, the hero is always the one. It's almost like a a sort of Mary Sue-ish type thing where they are always the one who has the best idea, the best,
Yeah.
plan, the
Mhm.
best, and everything always occurs to them. And so I did like the idea that, I mean, I thought it was a little silly that it didn't occur to Rick that, yeah,
Mhm.
you might want to do this because you get greater freedom. But I like the idea that Rick didn't always come up with the ideas. Like he got this idea from someone else. Like the
Mhm.
light bulb went off when Esteban said it.
Yeah, he doesn't have to always have the answers. I
Yeah.
do think, and you know what? Maybe desperation kind of just it didn't even occur to him. That's
Yeah.
okay, I guess.
Mhm.
But he's also been there a very long time.
Yes.
Okay, Rick. But
I mean,
he was
you've been there
trying.
so long, it just might like you lose sight of, you all you see is your destination. You lose
Yeah,
sight.
tunnel vision. And like it just didn't even because he's in the mind of like, I don't want to be here. So I am not going over there doing that. No, absolutely not.
Exactly.
So yeah, I
Yeah,
get it.
yeah.
But yeah, it made me chuckle.
So
Going into the city takes me one step further away
Further.
from,
Hmm.
yeah.
right. So speaking of, Rick, like, oh wow, going into the CRM, I give you a good idea. He does, right? And so Okafor has a plan for Rick and Thorne because they both uh joined the CRM and they're going through training. And we have a little montage of them, going through their training, doing hand-to-hand combat, learning to fly, things like that. Um, and then one evening, Okafor knocks on Rick's door, and then we see Okafor, Thorne, and Rick having, a little powwow that's probably, secret, right? Because Okafor said he didn't want to do this like in a conference room or something because, he didn't want to risk someone overhearing what he was telling them. And so his plan is we learn that he wants to change things from the inside. He wants to change CRM. He thinks that they're not doing things the way they should be. So he wants Rick and Thorne not to just be in the CRM, but he wants them to rise up in the ranks until they're a part of the force command. He wants them to be able to get all the intel and the briefings, and he explains to them what A and B mean. And I think most fans kind of know what A and B means, but B are the people who are basically they're going to follow. And he Okafor tells them that the A's, which is what Thorne and Rick are, they're the people who, they're leaders, they're strong, they think for themselves. They'll, try to save the world and they'll die trying. And probably the biggest thing is that people will listen and follow A's.
Hmm.
And that's a threat to CRM. He gives them a couple of books, one of which is one of the books that I think Morgan had, something
Hmm.
about art of peace or something like that. So, he gives them books and I think that's when it becomes even more clear that it's not the CRM, because that was one of the questions we had. Why are they letting Rick stay alive? What is the big deal about Rick? That it wasn't the CRM that was keeping him alive. It was Okafor
Yeah.
specifically, that was keeping him alive. And he was keeping him alive for a reason, for his own, plans. Um, talk about that little session. Imani, I just want to hear what your thoughts were about the way Okafor went about trying to recruit, Thorne and Rick, and did it work, or should he have done it a different way, or what are your thoughts?
I um I don't know if it worked exactly because Rick was very much not on board. Thorne was, but Rick wasn't on board, at least not initially. But I was thinking about that because the first thing that you're the veteran, I'm not. But the first thing I thought of when he gave him the books, he brought him off to the side, he gave him the books. The first thing I was thinking about was like War College. So I looked it up. I looked up what like War College was because I felt like he wanted to give them like a secret college, right? Education. And so war colleges are senior military academies that educate and train senior military leaders, strategists, and tacticians. And war colleges work with the goal of providing a professional education for military leadership. And their aim is to um, teach people to learn from past wars and to apply those lessons into future decisions. And then you hear Okafor as his first lesson to them talking about the Cold War. And, you know, when people hear the Cold War, they know about Russia and America, but, you know, generally speaking, people don't know, like, generally speaking, people don't quite understand why it's like a Cold War as opposed to like, I guess, hot war. So Cold War is a state of conflict between nations that does not involve direct military action, but is primarily through like economic and political actions and propaganda and espionage and proxy wars that are waged by surrogate nations and stuff. So the idea may be, the seed of that idea may be that Okafor wants to start to kind of promote some unrest from within. Like he wants to change things. He wants to do, like, it's possible that he's thinking coup or something, but definitely where he's inserting his people who have his ideologies to bring about a change in CRM. He doesn't want to get rid of the CRM. He doesn't want to necessarily depose anybody, but he wants to change from within. And in order to properly do that, he has to bring people in. He needs to train them himself in these things. He can't take people who are probably already like military folks. He has to bring them in fresh and like bring them up to the level and then insert them into the places that they need to be in order to promote like the agenda that he's looking for. So that was what my thought was.
Okay. So, Ashley, when Okafor was speaking to them, Rick made the mistake of saying we and, you know, speaking for Thorne. And she promptly let him know, you know, speak for yourself,
Oh,
keep
you
me
speak
out of
French
it.
now?
Exactly. And so um talk about Thorne and Rick. Let's talk about their relationship, that dynamic. Because even after that, they have a time where, you know, she tells him, you know, this person that you're, you know, thinking about, she's gone. They're gone. And he's like, no, they're not. And he's and she says, yeah, we are. They're not
Right.
gone, we are. But talk about Thorne and Rick's dynamic.
Yeah, I love their dynamic. I love that she comes in hot. She's like, "Don't play with me. You do not speak for me." Like she was very serious about the fact that, you know, I'm forging my own path here. I've been through hell to get here, and I'm not going to let you ruin it. And like I said, it reminded me a bit, not like completely, because when Michonne came into Rick's life, he was in like such a precarious moment. Like he just lost Lori, he has a new baby, everything's falling apart. So she was much more gentle with Rick. She was not, you know, and she also had, and same for him with her, like she had her own issues. But just the way that they both immediately saw that this was a trustworthy person, like even with all your other like issues, like I think you are a good man, and I trust you, and I want to see you succeed despite, you know, whatever I disagree with. I'm not here to fight with you. Like she says a very funny line, like, let's have a drink before we kill each other. But the truth is she wants Rick around. She knows that this is someone that can fix this. And I love that that so many people are able to see that, but especially those two women. I really, really hope that Thorne and Michonne get to meet soon. But yeah, the relationship between her and Rick is already really well done. And when she saves him, and you know, yeah, it's before they talk in the apartment, but yeah, when she saves him when he tries to escape, and you know, he asked for help. I love that he is learning to also trust her. So it's not just this one-sided thing where she sees him, he also sees and appreciates her story, and you know, that they can be allies in this. So
Mm.
I'm
I
really
mean, if you
excited to
can
move forward.
trust Jadis over and over again, you know, you can trust Thorne. But there was one of the things they talked about during that time when they had that conversation where she says, you know, they're not gone, we are. It really kind of goes into this idea of, because Thorne, like you said earlier, you know, she's from Cape Town, South Africa. She just happened to be in Las Vegas when everything went down. And so she was far, far from home. And I feel like it's easier to accept that there's no place, there is no place. She has no place to go. She's not making it back to South Africa. Right. And so it's easier for her to kind of accept her separation and the loss of her loved ones, as opposed to Rick, who knows, you know, that his family is literally, you know, down the
100
street.
miles
And so, you know, that brings us, I want to talk about, you know, like I said, we had some submissions and we had some listeners and of the show who submitted some questions and some comments. And one of them was Joe Green. And she talked about Pearl Thorne. And she said that what Pearl went through being on the other side of the world when things fell apart, the thought of being trapped on a separate continent from your family, not somewhere where you can ever hope to walk to. You know, she's like, that's my nightmare. That plus climate crisis and not wanting to be dependent on repeatedly having to take long flights and being an ocean away from her family is what prompted her, particularly after the COVID shutdown and you couldn't travel. That's what prompted her to move back to her home country. And I was like, wow, that's so true. When you're so far away, we think of how, because of air travel and everything, how small the world is. But when something happens,
it gets a lot bigger.
that's it. It seems like another, might as well be another planet. So for like, you know, first of all, Joe Green, thank you for your comments. But for Thorne, yeah, South Africa might as well be another planet. Like she's probably not going to see her people again. And so I think it makes it easier for her to fall into this world, into CRM, and because she was she was in the South African Navy, so she's, you know, she's a military vet. So continuing to speak about the military, you know, Rick has he's sitting on his bench again, and you know, Major General Beale shows up, and he starts asking Rick about Lieutenant Colonel Okafor. And he asks Rick about, you know, what are you doing? What's going on? That dynamic, those two, this Major General, well, I know in the Army, um, he would be a 2-star Major General, right? So it's the 1-star is Brigadier General, then there's Major General, then it's Lieutenant General with 3 stars, and then your 4-star is just General. And then the way you remember it, the order 1, 2, 3, 4 is be my little general. Brigadier, Major, Lieutenant, and then a General. Be my little general. That's how I learned it when I was in the Army. When I first joined the Army. So yeah, so this 2-star. And I think we had the backstory that he was in, what was he in? Was he Vietnam conflict? I thought that's what I'd read. Yeah. What did you make, Ashley? What did you make of that interaction between Rick and Bill?
Oh, Beale. I absolutely do not trust him. I think it's clear he doesn't really trust Rick either. And I think that's smart. He knows something is going on with Okafor. That much is clear. And I wonder how much he knows, because for me, it feels like Okafor's intent is kind of like you guys already said, like for a coup, to usurp this military, whatever it is. Maybe he wants Rick to take Beale's place. It feels like that's where this is kind of heading. So I'm very excited to see them interact more, but this was really just kind of a tease to say, I see you, you see me. Let's see what happens next.
Okay. So Major General Beale said, you know, told Rick something about Lieutenant Colonel Okafor. And he told him how Okafor was supposed to basically bomb Philadelphia, and that Okafor chose not to because he was an Air Force pilot, and he chose not to, and instead bombed, I believe it was a stadium, and it was like a holding place where there was about 4,000 Marines, and that Okafor basically he switched sides, and so we in that moment we learned that about Okafor, and it kind of for me it I don't know if it changed anything I thought about him. It added to it. It added some context to who he is and his backstory. But I feel like, and again, it's why you got the first impression rose. Like from the beginning, like we just instantly kind of like you know connected with him and fell for him. And it was the first time in a long time in The Walking Dead where I actually cared about a character or I was interested in them. And then for them to do it in one episode was just amazing. And it was the same thing with Thorne too, like just immediately connected with them. But I'm sure we'll talk about that, a little later. But um, Rick is part of the CRM. He goes into the community and he meets up with his friend Esteban again. And, it wasn't like, they kind of just ran into each other because, Rick was in the area, in the neighborhood or whatever. It was very intentional. When he's there, before they start talking, like there's a couple of guys in the foreground of the shot and they're carrying signs.
Yeah.
And the signs said, I believe they said, like CRM transparency now.
Yeah.
Which was interesting that within this secure, quote unquote walls of this, civil republic community, you have people that are, I don't know if I call them like a resistance, but they're questioning what's going on. We know like Rick had said that people aren't free because they're not free to leave. So they're not free. And I wonder if that's why people are questioning the CRM or what's going on that would cause them to do so. Like, do you guys have any thoughts about um that whole situation as far as like having people that are questioning the CRM?
I thought it was interesting. I think it was Imani who mentioned like civil unrest, and that immediately sprang to mind those protest signs. And Esteban mentioned his girlfriend is a journalist, so there's certainly like a community inside here that is wanting to know what's going on. I know they have literal news talking about what's going on in Omaha and Portland, and so that happening, I'm sure, was not helpful to the opaqueness that CRM seems to be working under. So yeah, I think it's interesting that it's not because when Rick first is talking about CRM, he's like, nobody wants to leave. I'm the only one who wants to get out of here. And then later he knows, these people aren't free. And I think maybe that's the journey a lot of them take is like, oh, this is amazing. And then eventually it's like, wait, why can't I go outside? So yeah, I think the longer you're there, maybe the more you start to ask those questions and wonder, kind of try to get behind the curtain and wonder what the hell is going on.
Yeah. So Rick basically wants information from Esteban, who gives it to him because they're friends and but he's concerned about Rick and he's like basically like don't die. But Rick said something and it was like just very like it was like a gut punch when he was like that he was gonna go back get back to his family or basically he was gonna die trying. And it was just, but the way that Andy delivered that line, where he kind of like breaks and you can hear it in the voice, like that, I think that was the gut punch for me, hearing like that emotion of him, like that desperation at that moment that he's still about trying to get back to his family. And so he gets this information because he's going to go on a mission. And he gets this information from Esteban, and he's out there and he's about to make his escape. And he's because he's gonna go through this like manhole, right? He's gonna go down this manhole.
He's trying to
And
pull a Don Draper, switching the dog tags with a walker. I'm like, okay,
yes,
Rick,
that's
I see
right.
you.
That's right. He was like, he has to because Okafor has said it before, like, basically the living don't, get free, right? So
Mhm.
so now he has to fake his death, and he chops off the hand of a walker. He puts his dog tags around this walker because he needs them to believe he's dead, so they're not going to go chasing him.
Mhm.
And just as he's about to leave, a walker kind of delays him just long enough for this like random girl to pop up and kind of throw everything off. And because before she showed up, he pulled the pin on a grenade. And this is the thing about him losing his hand, is that he couldn't put the pin
Put
back in the
pin back
grenade.
in. Yeah.
And so that's why he had to scurry and like drop it and run, right? And then I was being my usual cruel, you know, I mean, I'm not gonna call myself like a psychopath or anything, but I was like, wow. I mean, I would have just like threw that grenade and hoped she would have ran. Like, because look, I'm coming off of Daryl Dixon, where this man was about to get on a boat and go back to America, and then all of a sudden he hears this little boy screaming his name, calling his name, like Daryl, Daryl. And I'm like, he could have been left on the shore by himself, because I would have got on the boat and I would have kept going. I would have minded my American business, but whatever. I probably wouldn't last long because that cruelty wouldn't go far, but whatever. So he has to save this girl, and Thorne saw him. Thorne saw that Rick was trying to get away, and she tells him later that she saved his life, but she tells him that basically there is no getting away because they know about you. You know,
Mhm.
essentially they just would have went after you because they know where you're from. They know your people. And that's when Rick shows up at Okafor's, I don't know, room. Um, and he has this little blade or whatever to his neck, and they fight. Um, Talk about that fight, Imani. Talk about like what was said, like the whole idea, like with Okafor trying to tell him that, Rick, once again, he just wants to be free, and Okafor is just not having it.
Yeah.
And the admission that Okafor, you know, told Rick.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was a little confused by the idea that he was talking with Thorne about Rick's business. That is a little,
Mm.
I don't know if that's anything that's going to get revisited, but I just thought that that was a little strange. And he admits, like, perhaps I should not have told Thorne these things, but clearly the fact that he told Thorne but he didn't tell Rick shows he didn't intend to hold that over Rick's head, because I mean, truthfully, that might have done a lot more work to keep Rick there if he just said, I already know about Michonne. I already know about Judith. And if you try to leave, you are just going to be bringing trouble to their doorstep. But he didn't actually ever do that. Rick finds this out like as a matter of course when Okafor is forced to admit it. He's like, I went back to, which is his own investigative work too. He went back to Rat Island and found Rick's message in a bottle and looked at it, saw Michonne's name on the back of it. Well, first of all, he memorized lines from it. And he looked at Michonne's name on the back of the bottle and did some investigation into who Michonne was, because he said they went back to where they picked up Rick and Jadis, and whoever he or his surrogates asked around and found out who Michonne was, and presumably about Alexandria. He didn't say that, but one would assume he found out about Alexandria, found out about Judith and you know the settlement there. And I think we talked about it in the last episode where we said perhaps maybe that was what was keeping Rick there, was that they were holding it over his head, that they knew about Alexandria and they might wipe Alexandria out to keep Rick there. But it's not really, it's that, it is that, and it isn't that. Like, he didn't tell Rick that, but that would have been the plan. Like, if Rick had escaped back to his people, they would have just come and he told him and brought all that trouble back to everybody at Alexandria.
What'd you think about their fight?
The fight itself?
Yeah.
Oh, it was really good. I mean, I read something where someone was like, could Rick win a fight in could he win a fight in this in his own show? Like, can that happen? And I thought, and I was thinking about that in this part. I was like, oh, I mean, ultimately it was a standoff between I mean, they were sort of evenly matched for a second. Okafor kind of got the advantage, and then it was a standoff between a knife and a gun. So ultimately Rick lost.
But also not, because he wasn't going to do anything. He needs Rick and he's not going to kill him. So it was just limbs moving.
What were you, what'd you think when, and this is for either one of you, when Okafor made that admission about killing his wife?
I was, I mean, shocked, yes, but also like, well, you switched sides. So, I mean, I guess if she wasn't coming with you, that makes sense for Okafor. I mean, that's not what I think, you know, someone like Rick would not do that. But from what we've been given about Okafor and his mission, it wasn't wholly surprising. It was interesting to learn that he was responsible for, like, you know, what's happening in Fear with bombing Los Angeles. And someone made a very good point to me that, you know, him bombing Atlanta ended up being the reason that Lori and Shane hooked up. So he's like the reason for Judith. I don't know. It's all very interesting.
Wow.
Ties together.
Hey, yeah. Yeah, and I think because his wife didn't agree with bombing either. And I was wondering, I was like, well, okay, his wife didn't agree with it, but did his wife know that he was gonna bomb the place where she was, you know, with the rest of the Marines? Like, you know, that was wild. But, you know, because did he make that decision while he was in the air? How'd that go? Like, another thing, he was like, I bombed Atlanta and I bombed Los Angeles. And I'm like, there are countless military installations on the West Coast. You're flying from the East Coast to the West Coast. Like, I don't believe it, how'd that happen? But that was just me. I'm like, there are, you know, all kinds of military bases out there that could handle that. Huh?
I'm joking. I say he's the only one, but
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
But
he's the bomber.
So, you know, after they oh, and I just love the way when he, you know, Rick puts the gun to his forehead, but he, you know, Okafor takes it away and he's like, no, he's like, I won't, or I can't, or whatever. Like the emotion, you know, in the way Craig just played it, it was just like so good.
Yeah.
And then he told Rick, like, okay, you just came here and tried to kill me, but you know, now I'm gonna send you on a mission. And he and Thorne are gonna be sent out to the Cascade Mountains, and that's out near Oregon. So there, you know, there's Portland, Oregon. There's that's one of the civilizations, you know, that they have. And so it was gonna be a 12-month mission where they're going to build up this location, this colony, and then at the end of the, you know, that 12 months there were going to be a CRM summit, and presumably, you know, something's going to happen there. There's probably going to be something that happens, some kind of intel, some kind of group there that might be where there's going to be a fight coming up, who knows. But yeah, so we know that, you know, he's rose in the ranks enough that he's trusted to go to the other side of the country and to lead this, you know, project, this year-long project. And this is the dude that is always trying to escape, you know, who now knows how to fly a helicopter. And, you know, so I mean, that was interesting. But we get to a point and we have a scene where Rick looks like he's getting drunk in his room. The television is on, but Thorne just, you know, um, comes into his room unannounced, just, kind of busts in. And she says, "You got to watch this. You got to see this." And it's on the television. There's the report about Omaha and how it fell. And it's like, the two of them are questioning kind of like what happened, and they don't know. And the news report is saying that the CRM intelligence, is trying to figure out what happened. Now, if you watched World Beyond, then you know that the CRM is the one that destroyed Omaha colony.
Right.
And it's they have like a little satellite community, the campus colony, which is the home of the World Beyond characters. And so those were destroyed, and the CRM were going to destroy Portland as well. Um, because they felt like, again, I think we touched on this in our previous podcast, that these communities were not self-sufficient and that they would become a drain on the Civic Republic's resources. So yeah, Thorne believes that this just confirms that the CRM is doing things the right way, that it's smart to be secretive, to not let people know who you are or that you exist or what you have. And so she's all in even more than she was before. And so before she leaves, she drinks the rest of Rick's drink. And then for whatever reason, for the second time, she like smashes the glass. I don't really know what's up with her and smashing another glass, but she throws the glass up against the wall and she ends up leaving. I would have told her ass she needed to clean my damn room with the mess she made, but whatever. And then that moment gets us back to where the episode started, with Rick staring out, feeling, very upset and down. Okay. And it feels like that is when he made the decision to stop trying to escape. And before she left, Thorne had told him, well, there's one more good man to try to save the world, whether he wants to or not, which feels like Rick Grimes' story from the day the world fell. Whether you want it or not, you are the leader. You're the one that everyone's going to turn to. I always think about that, that moment when he's in that ditch with Daryl and he was like, "I never told y'all.
Yeah.
I never told y'all to follow me."
And
But
this is the thing that Okafor says, like, he says, "I don't want power." He's like, "You have it." And that it's a tale as old as time, but the person who doesn't want power is the right person to have it. And yeah, that's been the steady drum in Rick's story for from day one.
absolutely. So we have this, like, he's on this 1-year project with Thorne. They're in a Cascade and there's a montage and you see them rebuild or building up this community, and you see it over time how they clean things up and it looks gorgeous on the inside, and you can see out the window and everything looks great. And while this montage is going on, it's Rick in a voiceover. He's writing, which is essentially his last letter to Michonne, telling her that basically he's not going to try anymore, right? So we know that Rick has decided that man who he was, the man that was going to try to get back to his family no matter what, was gone. And that, basically he's another guy now. And then he destroys all the letters that he wrote to Michonne and all the phones that had Michonne and Judith's pictures on it. And there was like 4 phones. That was interesting to know that there were several phones. So we'll come back to that to the at the end, and I'll ask you guys about that, like what our questions are, because that's truly a question, like where all these phones come from, who are these people? Because at one point, Judith is considerably smaller than she is in the phone that we saw on The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
When Michonne first found it, you see one where she looks like she has like little pigtails or something. She looks like a toddler. So Ashley, the thing that I hadn't mentioned so far is that the dreams that Rick had about Michonne and meeting Michonne. So there were three of them. The first one is he meets Michonne, and she says something like, it's not where I want to be, you know, are you where you want to be? And then the second one is still kind of in that moment, and where she tells him that she eats here at this bench, this location, around the same time each day is where she has her lunch. And she says to him, oh, you know, you're pretty eager, and he says, maybe you are too, and she's like, no. And then the third one, his clothes change, or his coat changes, and he looks like it was like his like murder coat or something, or similar to it in that third one.
Yeah.
And she tells him to shut up about your misery, you're not stuck anywhere. And that's when she has that line where she says, we can make this whole damn world ours if we want to. Talk about those three scenes and those dreams, and what you felt and what you thought about them.
Oh God. I don't know that I have words to describe it, because in the screening, you know, with several people around, me and my friend were literally screaming about these scenes existing. It was watching alternate universe fan fiction come to life, which is an insane thing to realize. All three of us are fan fiction writers. It is like your dream to watch fan fiction in action. And so just the fact that they did this, I mean, I feel very strongly that Scott Gimple has read plenty of fan fiction, so he knows what he's doing in that regard. But yeah, just to watch it in this alternate universe, as you mentioned, it's like pristine, it's beautiful, it is outside of the apocalypse. I feel like this is Rick's ideal version of them. And you know, it's been mentioned that Michonne is wearing purple in the first time that he sees her, which is the same color she was wearing when they first meet in season 3, episode 6. So, and his jacket is also kind of similar to what he was wearing around that time. I mean, it's very much, it's them, but I mean, Michonne is giving than I, but that's fine. It's them, but in a completely different world. And I think that's what Rick is kind of longing for, is just like peace and quiet and just getting to enjoy this beautiful woman. The next time that he sees her, when he's talking about 5 pizzas and a wedding ring, she's in a white dress. Like, come on. Like, what are you doing, Rick? This is incredible. Incredible work you're doing. If Rick is writing fan fiction, I want to read it because it's perfect. But no, I just love that he, in a moment, like, he literally is lost. And he looks to Michonne to guide him out of that. I mean, he said the worst line in the world, do you know cartography? What are you talking about?
I thought it was cute.
Yeah, it's so dumb. It is cute, but it's so dumb.
Like, sir, you work right there. What do you mean you're lost? Like, your office is right there. You said it. The blue building. Okay.
He needed Michonne. He always needs Michonne to light the way, and I appreciate that. Even in his dreams, he knows that. So it was gorgeous. I loved it so much. Like, they were writing in that writing room. Thank you.
Yes, they were. So, okay, so we were asked by another one of our listeners, Rishon. She said, hi, everybody. I'm on cloud 9 right now. My question, what do you guys think of the significance of the 5 pizzas and an engagement ring thing? Like, is 5 random? And when I read it, I was like, girl, you tell us.
Right.
I have no idea. But did you guys have any idea what the 5 pizzas and the what that means?
I mean, maybe they'll have 5 children by all the time this is all done.
I really couldn't figure it out. Like, the number of times I watched this episode, and I was still like stumped. There were a couple things I was stumped by, and that 5 pizzas and a wedding ring thing was like number one.
The only 5s that were like in the episode is the 5 years after the bridge. That's where we start. And then he tried to escape 5 times. I don't know. Like, why?
I don't know. Like, why would you say that? Like, okay, what would you think if I brought 5 pizzas? Like, why?
Why would you? It's just
Why
two
would
of us.
exactly? It's just 2 of us. What would we do with 5
It means
pizzas?
something. I don't know what it means, but I feel like it means something.
Yeah,
Maybe we'll
And
get
we'll
to
get
it.
clarity,
Maybe it's
yeah,
something
later.
that
maybe.
they'll
Yeah,
revisit, and it's like some kind of hidden joke between the 2 of them that we've not ever been privy to in the
I
original.
know because we know about the
Is
mints
that
and the
possible?
toothpaste and the apples and the chili
Right.
mac and there's no
We
pizza.
have dissected them so much. I don't know what 5 pizzas could mean that's already
I don't know,
happened.
but
So
yeah.
maybe it's coming.
Okay.
That's my hope, is that we'll
Yes.
make it make sense at some point.
So we're getting down to the end of the episode, and Rick is flying a helicopter, and Okafor is basically in the passenger seat, and he's like, "Oh, I like the way you fly." And I'm like, "Sir, you're an Air Force pilot. Like, Rick is not that smooth of a pilot, but whatever." But in they're talking, and then Rick goes on to tell him a story from his childhood about, basically that his father committed like insurance fraud,
Basically,
and
right.
how it kind of like it rocked him, he said, because he always thought of his dad as this, honorable, like good man, and he lied and all this stuff. And he said that his mom said that told him after his dad had died, like what he did, it saved it, meaning their farm, I guess. And he saved us, and what he did wasn't right, and that the scars and the pain reminded him of what he, remind him that he saved us. And then Rick says, "I'm in." So, I guess we can take from that, him no longer being able to be with his family and everything he's gonna go through, those are the scars and that's the pain that he has. But he will know that in the end, what he was doing was to save, his family, to make the world a better place for them to be able to live, even if he could not live with them.
Exactly.
But I kind of touched from that,
Can
but
I just say, like,
Mhm.
when I first watched the episode, there was a lot happening in this moment, and I couldn't really tell what was being said. It was a little garbled. But I thought he was making up that story at first. Like, I
Mhm.
thought he was controlling the whole thing. Like, he had just killed Okafor, and he made this up. And like, I was like, oh my God, Rick. But clearly, after rewatching, I understood like the point of the story, and it's actually very poignant, that moment where he's saying he's willing to accept all this pain if it means keeping his family safe. But yeah, the first time I was like, wow, Rick is on one.
And then Okafor dies.
Yes.
And in that moment, I was like, "Oh, this is another dream or something,"
Mhm.
because surely they are not killing off this man that we have all, fallen in love with. There's
Yeah.
no way. Like, this character is so cool.
Mm.
Like, it's just like you just want to see him more and more and more.
Mhm.
And I've said that this reminds me of Watchmen on HBO when they killed Don Johnson in the pilot. And I was like, same thing. I was like, "Well, is this a dream? Is this like, 'cause get all this nonlinear storytelling has just got me all messed up."
Mhm. Mhm.
But I could not, I was like, "Oh no." And then he explodes like it's an
Oh
episode of
my
like The
God.
Boys or something. I was just totally blown. So, they have a crash landing, and we
Mhm.
see Rick is, and the other soldiers, they're getting up and they're scrambling to fight, and then there's another explosion, and Rick is in the foreground, the other soldiers in the background, and in the background we see that someone is like taking
Some
off
legs.
their mask and they're killing them, and you're realizing, oh, that's a sword, oh, that's a katana, like, and we know who it is. And she almost chopped off his hand himself if he still had a hand, because that
Mhm.
katana came and you could hear it hit the metal of his little
Yep.
fake arm. And she takes off his mask, and then she takes off hers. I mean, whatever it is, I don't know, what mask or
Samurai
I don't
thing.
know what it was.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's like, here we are again. Instead of a fence, it's there looking, he's looking up at her. And then it was the most abrupt fade to black I've ever seen. Like, I was cool with it ending there because I was like, oh, I hate y'all, but that's exactly where you're supposed to end the episode.
Yes, yes.
But what I mean, it was abrupt, Imani.
Yeah. No, it was. It was like you said yesterday, you were like, it was like the Sopranos ending. It was just like you didn't even get that moment like, because again, yeah, as soon as it happened, I was like, this is where it's gonna end. Like, we're not going any further than this. But I thought there was gonna be like a, and when we talked about it, we had a jinx moment because we both said it at the same time. It's you, and we thought that
Mhm.
it would be something like that. They say, Rick, Michonne, or it's you,
It's
or
you. Some
something. But it just abruptly ends right there. And I did think to myself, and I saw somebody posted that they were like, Rick knew who she was before she knew who he was. Which might be why he didn't fight her, like other than defending himself, like with his arm, because he can see through that mask, her face, because her face like didn't have the like sort of netted mask that he did, so he could see into
But
her
his
face.
eyes were closed. I don't think he saw her. Or if he did, he thought he was dreaming.
I think there might have been a moment where he did, because you could see in his face like he couldn't believe his eyes, like he couldn't
Yeah.
believe it was her. But like I think he had a moment before she took off, she took off his mask to know that it was him. But yeah, that ending was like far, far too abrupt. I was
Oh, I loved it so much. It
I
was
mean,
mm.
again, that moment was great.
yeah.
The way they ended it.
No, I love that. I love that it just was
Really?
like you see each other. First of all, I did not think we were getting this till episode 3.
Oh
Right.
yeah,
So
same.
just the fact that they were like, I mean, literally again, the whole room was screaming when they started seeing Michonne's feet like moving around. My friend was like, that's not her, that's not her. I'm like, it's her. This is her. This is happening. So yeah, I mean, the fact that they got to be face to face, yeah, I was very satisfied and I loved how it just was like, that's all you get.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and even if they didn't say anything to each other, it felt like I just needed like another like 2 seconds or something of even of them just staring at each other. It felt like if I were like talking right now and and then I hit stop record and it is just like it was like a sentence without a period.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
I
just
think
felt
that's
like
why I liked it.
it's
It
very
the
Same.
abrupt.
abruptness was why
Yeah.
it
And
was a bold choice.
it was, and it was a great place to stop.
Tanisha,
Um,
talk about the thing that you were saying about what she was doing. Like what you thought it meant, what you thought it suggested about the relations between her
oh, the
people and his
fighting.
people. Yeah.
Okay, so Michonne isn't just someone who's gonna attack, you
Right.
know, and so it leads me to believe that she has already been fighting CRM.
Oh yeah.
So what she was doing was something that was just it. So she's been fighting CRM this whole time, unbeknownst to Rick.
Yeah.
And so when Denai had said something about sending, I guess, clips of Bridgerton, I guess maybe of them arguing, it was like, okay, this is what they're going to argue about, the fact that there's this conflict between CRM, which he's now a part of, and then her group. And because I feel like he's totally bought into this idea of making this place better and
Mhm.
for all these people and and you know and changing the CRM. And
Mhm.
so I feel like there could be this conflict between them where he's like, I have to save the world. And she's like, your world is me and them 2 kids. Like, let's like, so there's that could be that conflict between them. And I thought about it too, like, and I think one of our we had another submission with Joe Green, and she'd mentioned like how this is gonna play out for Rick. And she says that um even though he's finally got closer to what he wants and needs and seeing him shown again, there's real trauma there that's presumably isn't just going to go away. Like after Deacon Glenn and Abraham, for all his anger and strength, there's a vulnerability, loneliness, hollowed out feeling to him, like he might just shatter at some point.
Mhm.
And I also thought about she played a part in Okafor's death.
Mhm.
How is
Mhm.
he going to feel about Okafor's death?
Mhm.
And I'm curious to see how that goes
Um,
between the two of them.
they had said, in all their early promotional material, they had hinted at this idea that it was like, are they lovers? Are they enemies? And I just was like, how could Rick and Michonne ever end? Like how could they ever get back to that place? And I think that we might have hit upon it. I think that ideologically now they're in different places. Like Michonne is a freedom fighter, and Rick is now, as of at least a year, has fully bought in. Like he really finally bought in. I kept saying he drank the Kool-Aid. He's finally drank the CRM Kool-Aid. He's doing the best that he can. And so now, like ideologically, they're going to be in two totally different places. And I think that might speak to why they might have a like Romeo and Juliet, or like a like Bridgerton kind of argument situation going on, because
Right.
yeah.
Now, we got another submission. It's from Denise. And she said, what was your favorite scene from episode 1? There's a two-parter, so let's just go with that first part. What was your favorite scene from episode 1? Ashley, you have one?
All of them. I mean, if I take out the dream sequences, which were genuinely like a thrill, the scene between Rick and Okafor, they're like tete-a-tete, like it was so well done. I love Andy is an amazing actor. I love when he gets to play. Also, I'm very glad they get to curse now. Thank you, God.
Yeah.
And Craig was amazing. Like he ate every time he was on screen. So yeah, that was my favorite.
You said you're glad they took what?
They get to curse now.
Oh, yes, that was fun. Yeah. Yeah, I would say that was my favorite too. That scene with Okafor. How about you, Imani?
I have to be honest, like I can't think. There were like moments that I really liked, but I can't think of like a favorite scene exactly. I don't know. Especially once we take out the dream sequences. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's hard
Okay.
to pick.
Okay, her second part was any predictions for the next episode?
I think it's gonna focus on Michonne. I don't think that's a prediction. Like the previews basically showed her.
Yeah.
Besides that, I don't know. I wonder if we get to see Rick. I think there was like a flash of him, but I don't know how much he's going to be in it. So I'm just interested to see like how she got to the point. Like this means she's also in Oregon. So like where's she been?
Is that where that took place?
That's what I thought.
Yeah, because they said they were flying up the coast, so it
Yeah.
would definitely have to be Oregon, Washington State,
Okay.
like that. 'Cause the Cascades are from Vancouver to.
I wonder if that was part of, are we in the time frame where they're about to have this summit at that location? Because that was
This
another
year, right?
thing. Huh?
Okafor said it's been a year, I assume, since he assigned him. So yeah.
Yeah, because that was something that Joe Green had said. She said, when Okafor told Rick about, all the heads of CRM were going to be at this summit in the Cascades in a year. She's like, seems like that'd be useful information for Rick to keep in his back pocket. Which, yeah, it seems like maybe things will come to a head there. Like that would make sense.
I think also, Okafor mentioned earlier the Cold War thing.
Mhm.
And, that just got me to thinking, like, are Rick and Michonne going to be on there, Philip and Elizabeth Jennings? Like, can we get some spy action? Like, what's going to happen? I really want them. I said this in our previous episode. I want them to infiltrate CRM and like take it over. So let's go.
So do you think he'll probably like go back? He'll still be under CRM, but working with her, but he's
I think
in
so.
and she's on the outside.
Eventually, like once they get past whatever ideological battle they might have. I don't know if Rick has fully bought in. Like he bought in because he had no choice, but Michonne is back in his face now. So like I can totally see him be like, let's go home. And Michonne be like, we gotta save these people.
I mean, that's
good. Maybe you can go that way.
Yeah.
This was the beauty of nonlinear storytelling, is that it made it possible for them to have their reunion at the end of episode 1, which nobody thought was going to happen. And apparently, if it was up to the network, it wouldn't have happened. And it was Denai who fought for the reunion that happened in episode 1.
He loves us.
Because they wanted it to be around 4 or 5.
Like
And
out of 6 episodes?
Exactly.
Can you
So
imagine?
my thing was, okay, if you do remember that you gave them a 6-episode order and not a 12.
Right.
Like, and then it's like, okay, well, if you don't want them to get together until like 4 or 5, then you must know in your head already that there's going to be a season 2. Because it can't be that late, right? And so I don't know. So thanks, Denai.
Yes, thank you.
For saving us. But imagine if it happened at 4 or 5, because we heard some kind of rumblings about it was sluggish or the pace or what have you. Now, it wasn't sluggish to me, because to none of us, right?
Right.
And I'm not saying like, none of us are, have written an episode of television that's aired or anything, you know what I mean? But some of these things, we call them storytelling. You call it character development. I mean, you can't, and that's the thing about fans and, talked about fan service before. You cannot give fans what they want all the time, or what were we going to get? Like explosions the entire time? Because let me tell you something. I remember seeing a limited series and I was like, I am so tired of these shows where the killer is some random person that we never would have imagined. They just kind of come out of nowhere. I'm like, I wish the killer would just be the person, the most, obvious person, because that's usually who it is anyway. And then I saw this limited series and they gave me exactly what I wanted. And I felt like a clown. And I said, don't ever give me what I want ever again, because that was stupid.
Wait, please tell me who it was. Which one it was? Was it
The Undoing?
Okay,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, I was like, and I'm not saying it was horrible because they were horrible show writers or whatever, but I was like,
yeah, I was mad.
when I was like, wait a
It felt
minute.
like gaslighting.
I was like, wait a minute. Oh, he did do it?
Right.
I was like, nah. And I'm like waiting and the show's over and the credits are gone. I'm like, no. Like, that's it. Like, he really did it.
Yeah.
Don't ever.
What do we do all that for?
Yeah. Exactly. Had us like suspecting even the children and stuff, and it was in the end.
Right. I had the red string, like trying to figure out what could have possibly. Yeah, that was frustrating.
Then for a moment, I was like, is it this black lady lawyer?
Right.
Like, well, why would she do it? That don't make sense.
It was her kid. It was the woman's kid. It was the daddy. It was the lawyer.
Yeah,
literally
everybody but him.
I'm like, did she do it herself? Like, yeah, it was yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, don't listen to us. Don't listen to us anymore. Ever. Don't. But yeah, I mean, no, it wasn't sluggish. It wasn't. I don't understand how you could even think that. Like, I loved it. But again, I love, like, if you have AMC Plus, go watch Rectify. And all those people did was sit around and talk. So I might not be the best judge of character because I love just people talking. Yeah, Mad Men and so I don't know. But it's weird to me to say it's sluggish because, and I said this to Imani, it seems like what we got, particularly with this episode and maybe some other episodes and maybe some of the episodes in Daryl Dixon, is that we're getting what was happening in The Walking Dead in the early seasons that everyone says were the best. It wasn't until they changed and started like all these big explosions, all these, these like wars and stuff. That's around the time when people started saying they had a problem with the show. But that's also the things that people apparently like. Because when we get something like this, it's like, oh, it's slow, it's sluggish, it's, it's bloated, it's whatever. So I don't know what to make of that.
I don't either, because this was my favorite. I mean, I have, we've talked about our favorite episodes of Walking Dead, but if this were an episode of Walking Dead, it would go like top 5 easily. Yeah. Just like, and I think part of it is like that, we talk about this with writing, but that interiority and like having that time with Rick, which I know, Tanisha.
It's an
But
inside
like,
joke, y'all. One day we
yeah,
might tell you. I struggle, whatever. Okay, go ahead. Go
you
ahead.
don't, but anyway, yeah, like just getting to spend that time with Rick, which we have not been able to do in a very long time, like
Mhm.
basically since the pilot. I mean, it felt like just living with him for a minute, and it was
Yeah.
really nice. It was nice to be back with Andy as an actor and Rick as a character, and in such a different situation than we've ever seen him in.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know what people could dislike. Like,
I,
do y'all like the show?
I
What is there to be mad about?
I said the same thing. I said, people are complaining, but like, it wouldn't it have been nice to have learned more about Rick, like the actual fact that he grew up on a farm? Like,
Mhm.
how is it that we went 8 seasons with this man, eight and
Right.
5 episodes, and never knew that
That's
about him?
part of why I thought he was making it up. I was like, what?
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, and I was just like, why we got so much from just this one episode, right? And like, um we won't go into it here, but the I love you that, or that he said in this episode to a letter, was much better than the I love you that I feel we got on the show. I am alone with that, but
We'll talk about that at the end of
that's
the
a
show.
separate
We'll
topic
get
for a
into that.
separate time. But the fact that we got that, and just like, even in the trailer when he was saying, and then now we got the context for him saying it, but when he was
Mhm.
saying to Okafor, like, my wife is my choice, my daughter is
Mhm.
my choice,
Mhm.
like, I was like, you're getting so much more of his heart. Like, you're getting
Yeah.
to know so much more about him through this. And we still got, I mean, he still lost his hand. We still got somebody literally exploding. We still got walkers that were on fire. Like,
Helicopter
what
crash.
more do you need?
Yeah.
You, you know, when you said that, you talked about his heart. When they kept saying, denying Andy and Scott kept saying it's a love story, it's a love story. I think people were thinking this was going to be like Sleepless in Seattle. Like it was going to be How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Like they just lost it. And like, because they couldn't imagine a love story within The Walking Dead. And they thought it was going to be something totally just, off the rails. But,
Yeah.
there was a Entertainment Weekly article.
Mhm.
And just like real quick, it was the one that was titled Andrew Lincoln Explains Why the Ones Who Live is Ultimately a Love Story. And Scott Gimple said, it's an epic love story, but it's a survival story too, because here's a wild question. Would Rick Grimes have survived coming out of the hospital if he didn't have a wife and a kid? I'm not
Mhm.
sure he would have. What drove him was his love. And Michonne was living like a walker because she had lost her family. And what brought her back, notes Gimple, was love from a new group of family and friends, which he says serves as, quote, fuel for the engine that makes them able to survive this horrific world and even build it into a non horrific world. They need to find each other to survive and to have that power. And like, I feel like that's what this is. Their love is the engine that drives this show, that
Yeah.
makes him
Yeah.
keep wanting to escape, that
Yeah.
makes her travel to God knows where across this country to
Mhm.
look for him. That's
Mhm.
all it is.
Mhm.
Like, so the heart, the emotions, the conversations that they have, like, those are all good things. Cause I think most people understand that this show is not just a zombie show. I think even, the creators, and that includes Robert Kirkman, said it too. Like the zombies are just like the thing, but it's
Mhm.
about these people
People.
and it's
Yeah.
these human stories.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the whole fact that they were, I mean, historically, zombies and zombie movies going back till Night of the Living Dead has been more of an interrogation of people, and the
Mhm.
ways in which people behave with other people at the, in the apocalypse, or at the end of the world, or at taken to your extremes, like how people behave at their extremity, right? And Rick says, and they made sure that of all of the little clips that they showed you at the beginning of this episode, to bring you back to take you through the journey where they were on the original show to where they are now. They do use the voiceover where Rick talks about the fact that we are the Walking Dead. Like, the
Mhm.
people who think the Walking Dead are the walkers are the people who I think fundamentally misunderstand the show and fundamentally are in it for the body count and you know the zombie kills and that sort of thing. And that's never what, I don't think that was what Frank Darabont planned for it to be about. And going forward, that's not what it was supposed to be about. It was supposed to be about these people and what they do in this situation and where they what their motivations are. And like you're saying, like Scott was saying, the love that is acts as the engine for all their decision making.
Okay, guys. Let's talk about critiques. You have any, Imani?
Yeah, so in the way that the episode went, it was, you know, told non-linearly. And usually when you're doing that, you kind of start like where the person is now, and then you jump back through a flashback. But in this instance, they jump back to where Rick was despondent, and then but that was not now. That was about a year or so prior to now. And then they tell the story, and then they bring you back to that place where of Rick's despondency, and then you keep going. And I thought that was potentially sort of confusing, so I wouldn't have done it that way.
Okay.
I mean, in that vein, I also, and this might not be a critique, maybe it's more of a question, but the decision to start the story 5 years, I mean, the earliest we get is 5 years after the bridge. And I was sort of expecting to kind of see a lot of stuff prior to that, like his recovery from the explosion, just kind of where he's been in that time. So maybe we will get that. I'm not saying it's impossible to still revisit that, but yeah, I was surprised, I guess, that we didn't even go through any of that.
Okay. And for me, I want Michonne to have a different wig. I want her to have a completely different hairstyle. I mean, everybody else gets to do that. Like we saw Carol go from short to long to short again. And I'm just like, I want I want them to switch it up. Give her something just completely just different. Like, I just think that would be better.
Now you
Well,
got
we
a
did get
haircut on the
Michonne in
show.
some braids, so there was that.
That would be cool.
Yeah,
I would love to see her in braids.
I mean, you did.
I mean,
but
in
it
his
was a dream.
dreams.
Yeah.
Yes, but you
But
know.
look, see, but if she had like friends and they had friend time, you know, the hair store, nobody is taking over the hair store,
And you know that Yaki's still there. Yeah, absolutely.
ready to go.
Listen, somebody in Negan's camp had bundles, so come on, let's go.
Okay, now we also got a critique from one of the listeners. Her name is Amanda, won't last 2 days. And she said that her critique is that Philly is too central to be a secret city. That in later seasons and spinoffs, you know, characters have been all over Pennsylvania and up to New York City. There's no way they didn't know the CRM or wonder what was up with Philly. So, yeah, we would assume, even with Dead City, let's assume that the CRM is still around even as we move forward into that timeline. Yeah. And because they're very protective of their secret city, anyone who's like snooping around in the vicinity, you would think that they would do something. So it would be interesting to see how they are able to handle um being in that area and then continuing to keep, you know, themselves secluded. Um, because I imagine what they have, they have their turbines or whatever, and they've got, you know, there's probably all kinds of activity and stuff going on. So yeah, that was a good one. So thank you, Amanda, for
Maybe it would have been smarter to be in Pittsburgh.
maybe,
Yeah.
maybe, yeah. So what are we looking forward to? We've got 5 more episodes. What do we want to know? What answers are we looking for, Ashley?
First thing I want to know is what is up with these phones that Rick had been carrying around with Michonne and Judith's pictures on them? part of my question, and this is something Scott Gimple noted when Michonne left the show and found the phone, is that this version of Judith is the older one. It's not the one he left. So
Mhm.
who's drawing these pictures? Why is there writing in Japanese? Why are there so many? Like, and he had 4, I think, and Michonne had 1. So was there 5? Is that number 5? I don't know. It's interesting but odd, and I really hope that they address that.
Mhm.
Let's see what else. I think we didn't get, not that I want to see her or anything, we didn't get any information about Jadis. Like, does Rick even know that Jadis is the reason he's there and got picked up and all that stuff? I assume because she's the only other person in the opening credits that we will see her soon, but interesting that she was not even mentioned, even though she was in the previously on. And then I'm just, I mean, I know different communities have different names for walkers, but I'm curious why theirs are called delts. I mean, I don't know if it's like a Greek thing, like they do the whole A and B thing, but we've also already seen alpha and gamma. I have no idea, so I don't know.
Yeah.
What are they doing? I wonder if that's something that they'll answer for us at some point. It's an interesting name.
Yeah.
Mm.
That was my first thought though too, was when the A and the B, I was like, maybe there's some people that are C's and then the
Right.
delts are like,
Yeah. I mean, maybe it is that, but I don't know.
Hmm.
I like that they didn't give us context, but
hmm,
I kind of want it.
yeah.
Sometimes that's fun too. Like I know people are like, oh, it's good, being curious about what's happening next and wanting information. I mean, that's natural.
Mhm.
But I also think like we're at a different time in television now where I've heard like television writers say that they feel like they have to put on what was once a first season. It feels like they need to put it in a pilot.
Mm,
Like,
Mm.
and it's got they it's just so much, and like the executives are asking more, 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 more. And so, but I think one of my questions that I'm looking forward to us finding out is what is what's the CRM's plan? Like, okay, you're having a summit, you know, with all the leaders. Is there like a bigger plan coming up? Are they like plotting something bigger? Is there a ready to like take over
yeah.
Mhm.
completely?
hmm
Yeah, this whole thing of having this summit, or you just like slowly, because at some point you can't be secret anymore as you continue to build these different locations all over the country. So it's like, what is the end game for
Right.
them?
Yeah.
What are they trying to do?
Yeah.
Along those lines, they put it out there, but and we didn't get any satisfaction. So I can't imagine that they mentioned it and it doesn't pay off at another point. But the echelon protocol or whatever it is,
Oh, the
that he
briefing. Yeah.
wanted them to
Mhm.
be like part of, like that
Mhm.
he wanted them to be briefed on. He was like, you're gonna know I'm putting you in a position to know what more than 99% of the CRM and 100% of the Civil Republic itself. So, like way, 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 way up there. I'm
Yeah.
curious. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because yeah, is that something that's about to happen? And that's why he wants them to have that briefing because they had the operation with destroying all these places. That was a whole thing with from World Beyond with the destroying of Omaha and Portland, like Cobalt or something, whatever.
hmm
So yeah, that would be
Mhm.
cool.
And then now that we mention that, I am curious, Okafor, his untimely death, unfortunately, we won't get an answer from him, but I'm curious what he meant when he tells Rick to, when the time comes, you'll know it and swear on the sword, and what will be the context of that. I assume that we will see that at some point, but
Yes, on the sword and is swear on the sword and what?
Don't
Don't let
hesitate.
it take, or what was
I
the
don't
other
know
one?
about that.
What was
I
it?
thought he said don't hesitate,
Don't
which
hesitate.
makes sense to me, but
I
the
mean, it
captain did
makes
say don't let
sense,
it take.
but that don't mean that's what it said. Because what you said, yeah, that makes sense, but that
I
does
mean,
not mean
yes,
that's what
yes,
they
yes,
said.
yes. You are
But
correct.
The
That's what
captions did not say that.
The captions did say, don't let it take. And I'm like, oh, I
Yeah,
don't
it
know
doesn't
if
make.
that's
I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Let's ask Craig. Let's see if we can get him on the
Yeah,
line.
maybe the captions got it wrong.
That happens often. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, y'all let us know in the comments what did he say?
And what did he
Don't let
mean?
it take.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then once you tell us what he said, what did he mean? What did it mean? Because we didn't get it. I mean,
Hi, everyone. So that's it for this week's episode. Thank you for watching. But before you go, drop into the comment section and let us know, what song would you dedicate to Michonne and the ones who live? Who gets your first impression rose? And let us know what your thoughts were about the first episode. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next week.